As usual, I have Laure Jackson, our specialist sensory occupational therapist, answering all your questions about sensory needs. Hello, Anne.
Hello, good to see you.
Yes, and some really positive feedback from last week's interview, including people who love your laugh, which is great.
Of all things, it's just like that so tickled me. You said that last week, just a little bit of feedback, and I thought, oh, how lovely.
It's good though, and we've got questions coming back. We're helping people. I love that it's not just helping children, which I think would be. I think you said it's often we think sensory issues. Well, it's just a thing for children to sort out, but it's such a wider group of people that have these life issues.
Yeah, totally. And that's, I think, part of the biggest message that I want to be able to share. Over years, as I've been developing, the business, thinking about what am I doing, what am I here for, kind of like the big questions of life. And it's just like, I love this topic, but it is so much more than the boxes that I've been put in the past as a therapist, as an OT, either in the NHS or even private, or boxes that I put myself in. And actually, when you look at the topic, it's really lovely to have that freedom to think, wow, this really is from the tiniest of tinies, even before birth, things that we can do, as we touched on
last week,
in pregnancy, right the way through to the latter stages of life. And, in schools, in homes. I would love to extend more into business as well, because I think the more productive we can be as adults in business, just really happy, really sensory healthy, then so I'm a big proponent, sensory health for all, wherever you are, whatever age you are.
Fantastic. Right, let's dive into a question which we got from last week. Here you go. Can you ask Laure Jackson if you don't mind? We absolutely don't mind. Send your questions in and we will ask them to Anne. It's absolutely fine. Right. Are there things that we can do, all of us, to maintain our sensory health as we get older? Someone I know is very sensitive to sound. When there is a lot of background noise, people speaking, music playing, etc., they find it very difficult and almost overloading. Aside from limiting the background noise, is there anything they can do to help manage that? And that's from someone who wanted to be anonymous, which is fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Auditory is, it's a big one. Mind you, I'll probably end up saying that about all the senses, won't I really? So okay, I might just take that back. So background noise and coping. There is lots we could explore as far as keeping our sensory health, like our physical health, our mental health, as topped up and as well as possible as we go older. But I will focus on the auditory processing there. Again, there's the element of breaking it down to assessing, treating it, and then managing what's left over. So I actually do work with an auditory training program. So that is something that actually does help treat. Helps the brain to integrate and to be able to focus on every single frequency that we hear as humans. So from 0 to 20,000 hertz, roughly, is our human hearing pitch frequency level. And what that does is it actually trains the brain to be able to tune in and modulate from an auditory perspective and just manage those sounds really well. And it helps you, what we call discriminate. Discrimination is when you can pick out the voice that you want to attend to in the background. So that's why background noise is really annoying, because for some people, they can't discriminate. If I'm talking and then there's loads of background noise going on, they will find it hard to discriminate my voice. So we can help train that discrimination to certain voices, to certain frequencies, to things that they want to be able to attend to. But that takes effort, and it does take a little bit of money to invest in that auditory training program, but it is possible out there. That helps, discrimination, balancing, so not so sensitive to certain frequencies. Some people can cope with a lower voice. Say, for example, a male voice is often better tolerated than a high-pitched female voice, a baby crying. There are certain sounds that really do seem to aggravate a lot of people's auditory system. So it's trying to, minimize those experiences where possible, train the brain where we can to cope with sounds, and to modulate it. Absolutely, where you can, take sounds that you don't like out of the environment. We also want to reduce general sensitivity in the whole system. Because our systems interlay and overplay, it might be that if we were able to work on their touch system, that we could actually reduce their sensitivity in their hearing system. Okay. So, yeah, this is where you get into therapy. This is where you're not directly treating the auditory system itself. It's where you're treating the whole nervous system. You're treating the whole body. And that often works. And that's where the parents who tell me, or those who tell me that they used to wear ear defenders, which obviously is another strategy. You put earplugs, ear defenders, all of those things to protect your ears. That's really common sense. Anybody can do that. Anybody can find them online. But if you actually treat the whole body, which is obviously what I aim to do, you can then reduce what we call the arousal levels, that kind of stress in the whole system, which makes everybody much more sensitive to sensory stimuli anyway. So if we reduce the arousal levels, reduce the stress in the system, then that should also help auditory processing, that they're able to manage it a little bit more. So that's kind of, but I would, for the main part, it's absolutely get the headphones, get the earplugs, try and calm the system, meditation, whatever you like to do, calm the system to try and reduce arousal levels, and then avoid what you can. And then, feel free to get in touch if you want to actually look at a specific auditory training program.
So I do remember that we lived in a house. It was an apartment. So there was someone below us and someone above us. And below, I don't know what it was, but it was sort of a high-pitched rattling thing. I don't know whether was it a speaker, was it something banging against the wall? But it used to drive me to distraction. Whereas Joe's like, I can't even really hear that. Oh, I suppose it's not really bothering. Yet for me, I was going up the wall because it was just this in the background thing. Mm-hmm. And I tried to find some research, and all I could find was that people who are more creative perhaps can have a greater propensity to frustration from certain frequencies. I don't know if that was true or not, but I mean, this is a long time ago, so there wasn't that much information easily available.
Oh, let me tell you a bit of research that just coming to mind as you're speaking about it. There was research done with a class of children next to a train station, and so they had that low rumbling. We'll come back to your high pitch in a minute, but they had that the low rumbling of the trains in and out all the time. Those lower frequencies, they're great for developing body awareness because they actually, it's like if anybody's been to a big concert, or our teenage lads or some of our boys that want the bass up really loud and it's like woof, 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 you get the real bass. That's a lot of vibration going through the body. That really helps with body awareness. However, it can be also really quite exhausting for the brain, having those lower frequencies. That's often, just to digress, why when we travel, we can be really tired because there's a lot of low frequency stuff going on, whether it be trains or cars or planes, an awful lot of a low background noise that happens, and that the brain is always processing that at that level. So we often say, actually, if you do listen to music, if you do listen to slightly higher frequencies, that will help. So going back to the research with this class that was next to the train station, was that they played music of a higher frequency in the classroom, in the background, to try and get the brain to tune slightly higher up. And the difference in the grades was quite remarkable. Wow. So that is definitely something. Lower frequencies have their place and they are brilliant, but there are mid-range frequencies that help the brain to focus and concentrate. And then actually some of the higher frequencies are really good for creativity. And actually we would use for our creatives who are looking for more creativity, we have music that we use that is modulated in such a way that it concentrates much more on those higher frequencies for the people who are comfortable with those high frequencies, because as you say, there are some high frequencies that will really be quite not helpful. So it's about finding, again, your unique, sensory thumbprint. We have our generalities about the frequencies and the different levels and how they make us feel and how they help us to function. But We have to apply it to our own individual way of being too.
I think in that particular situation, it was discovered that the builders, instead of having joists that were supposed to free hang, well, I don't know what that means, but anyway, they'd actually bolted into the walls. So when we walked along the floor, he was hearing something that was literally reverberating through the floor into the walls, into his body. They had to actually, I think eventually they had to actually take the whole floor out of this apartment block and redo it because it was done badly. But I don't know what the tapping was, whether it was him because he was frustrated, because he was quite aggressive with it all, which you can understand later on, but okay, he wasn't justified in his actions. But yeah, that high-pitched tapping noise used to, I mean, I had to leave the house sometimes. I couldn't focus, I couldn't think, I couldn't do anything. It was just awful.
Yeah. And was it kind of like tapping? So it was on, off as well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as even as sometimes what we call our brains will habituate, which is where you can actually switch it off. So, I mean, perhaps I don't want to frustrate some of your listeners, but there might be something in your room at the moment as you are listening to this that you can hear or that you can actually feel. Maybe just pay attention. If you're sitting down, pay attention to the fact that you are sitting on a seat, and you can register the fact that you're actually sitting down. But if you carry on chatting to the voice, your brain will habituate to the fact that, you know, your bottom's on a seat and you can feel it, and it will start to concentrate again on what I'm talking about. So those sensations it will forget about. And often our brain can forget about, it will habituate to a sound that is regular, but actually we get used to it and the brain switches off and it says, you know, it tells itself, I don't need to listen to this anymore. It's not important. But on, off is particularly hard to do that because you're just getting that stimulation all the time. And then the brain has to flick it off and then, but it's on again.
The interesting thing you said about the low frequency noises, like in a vehicle. So I guess the tires on the road or the noise of the engine, whatever coming through. I mean, cars are very well soundproof these days, but you're still going to have that low rumble. That's actually quite interesting. I mean, I used to be a trucker for 15 years and all truckers are always tired, but we're constantly sitting in an environment where you're literally, I didn't understand this before now, but you're being swamped by low frequency noise, which is exhausting.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yes,
it really tell your trucker friends to make sure they get the music on. And
now I know why I like the music on.
Yeah, that's right.
Coming back to what you said, so this is a comment that came in off last week's interview. I really enjoy your interviews with Anne. I'm sitting at my kitchen island counter cutting a pile of celery for the freezer, something that would normally drive me crazy, but listening to the interview, cutting and smelling the fresh smell of celery, focusing on the size to cut, I had all the senses going and I was completely relaxed.
Oh, isn't that lovely?
But that's exactly what you're saying, isn't it? About almost effectively retraining in order that things that would wind you up don't.
Yeah. Using that, it sounds as though using that sense, because they were focusing on the size, that actually that was enable enough to override any more unpleasantness, and they were able to pick up the things that perhaps were more pleasant sensory wise.
The mind is really cool, isn't it? What it can do.
Amazing. I know. It's like, I just think we're amazing. Like,
okay. Another question for you. Another question for Anne, Laure Jackson. You can save this for the following week if you haven't already. There's never too many questions. Send them in. Picked up on something she said yesterday. So this is last Thursday's interview about the link between movement and speech. When presenting at work, I almost have to stand up to speak. I find it very difficult to present while sitting down. I think it's less about the standing up and more about having the freedom to move, which ties into what she said. I'm not sure it's a question or a comment, but anyway, I think that's good.
Yeah. Do you know, I was looking back at these and I realized, crumbs, how much I am a physical communicator. It's like, I know this is radio technically, but my hands are going here, there and everywhere all at the same time. And I have to use them to help me to express my thoughts. That's the way that my brain works. So yes, I totally understand, whether that's a physical moving through space or even just using the body to help. Because our senses are so interlinked, I need that help because I've never been very good at expressing myself, believe it or not. I've never had confidence in the way that I express myself. So I think part of that was using my hands to be able to help me to think well and therefore to be able to communicate well. So, and that's where, if anybody wants it, singing is a big part of who I am and how I am. And a couple of albums later, but that's because I always found that the voice, singing somebody else's words, was great because I had the passion, I had the emotion, I had the understanding, I had the ability to communicate. I just wasn't very good at putting my own words to it. So that's why I've always loved music. So now that this is a big stretch for me doing this, and I'm that's why I'm so delighted that it's been so well. People seem to be understanding what I'm saying.
No, they have, and it's really good. We do recommend that you watch the video as well as listening to this online. You can go and watch the videos on YouTube or even on the catch-up page on our website. They're all there for you to watch. Try and make it as easy as possible. So coming back to this, I'm coming back to the car thing. That low frequency thing is really, that's in my mind now.
It's got you, hasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it has. Because I used to have music on a lot in the car, and I couldn't just drive a vehicle and that's it, because I would lose the plot. I would get really bored. I would get really tired. My mind would start to wander. But that makes more sense because a couple of times the radio is broken, whatever. Why I just had to have some sounds in the cab, which for me was radio or cassette player back then, which dates it a little bit, CDs later on. But yeah, that low frequency thing is interesting because there's low frequencies everywhere. Even a washing machine.
Yeah.
That's a low frequency, or even a dishwasher makes a little bit of a low rumble, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think I'd love to get involved with that. I love the design of really low decibel things. We designed and built a house when we were living in Northern Ireland, and I went round all the kitchen places to find out which appliances I could find that had the lowest decibel, because I knew it was an open plan area, and being conscious of the auditory system, I thought I want it to be as quiet as absolutely possible so that my brain is free to concentrate on the things that I want to, because I like to think. I don't always like music. Well, I don't often like music in the background personally. I'd rather have just space and quiet. So that was important for me. And I think that's a big thing. Anybody who's listening, who's in kitchen design or machinery design, apart from cars, because we do know the silent cars that came out, we lose that awareness of, oh, crumbs, there's a car coming.
People were throwing up in the car. I think it was Mercedes made a car that was so quiet, people were actually being sick because there was almost no noise as they were moving, and they couldn't process the lack of sound within the car against the movement outside the car.
There you are. That's amazing, because we know it with visual. Like the difference between visual and vestibular causes the car sickness. That's the first time I've heard that. It's fascinating. I totally understand it, because that's it. Your ears give you your bearings. Your ears are processing your speed. And again, you've got that mismatch of like, I'm not hearing. I should be hearing that I am moving through space fast, with what sound gives you. But if fascinating.
Yeah, I think what they had to do was actually generate digital sound to recreate the idea of a window that wasn't perfectly sealed, which was fascinating to think about.
Yeah. And that's where I think the silent cars, if we were like crossing a road, I had it once, so I remember that there was a really quiet car that came up, and you're so used to, or we have been trained to be aware of a car sound before we cross the road. I mean, we always stop and look left and look right and, do the proper thing. But there are times that we have just got so used to the sound of a car that we can judge without even using our eyes if there's a car there. But I was caught out once, and it's just like there was a really, really quiet car that came up. I thought, whoa, I have to process differently now. I can't expect to know with the new electric cars that are coming out that there is a car coming along. Mind you, they are changing those electric sounds now to actually give more of an electric sound than a quiet sound.
I did hear a car the other day that was electric, and thought I actually heard it.
Right.
Whereas they were almost silent. But yeah, stop, look, listen. I mean, that's what you were taught to do as a child. You stop, you look, you listen.
Yeah.
But that listen's gone with electric cars.
Yes.
Interesting. Yes, we're covering road safety now.
Who knows? And going back to trucking, if I may, again, if there are any trucker friends listening too, it's also the lack of movement. And that's where we've had to use the auditory. Your eyes are already taken because your eyes have to be on the road or thereabouts. Your ears.
You hope so.
Your ears are they're open, but you can't really do much else with your tactile system unless you put in, which I would suggest actually, little vibrating mats. That's another thing for your truckers, that you actually sit on it. So you every now and again, maybe your seats do this now. I have no idea, but and getting movement, because movement is what stimulates the vestibular system, which keeps your arousal levels in the place that they want you to be. So when you're sitting on a seat, you're not getting that. You might have a little bit of up and down, maybe. Again, truck design, very happy if anybody wants a bit of consultation as to truck design, how else we can get movement into those seats, because you are static for a long time, and that's really not great. Or, workouts whenever you do your, what do you call, you probably don't call them pit stops, do you? Truck stops.
Yeah.
Whenever you have your movement breaks, it's just like, right, we're going to get you doing some exercise, truckers together, I don't know.
We're covering everything. We've gone from dementia to pregnancies and fetuses and babies to truck design. You see sensories everywhere. So, okay, so I have a question. Some things that I do, I need silence because I'm concentrating, and other things I cannot do without external noise, music. So what is it that's about? If I'm doing the finances, I've got a spreadsheet. If I have music, I find it very hard to concentrate. But if I'm doing other jobs where I'm trying to create something, a graphic or whatever, without music, I find it very hard, very clumsy, very clunky. It takes me a lot longer than having music, which is technically a distraction. It's the same way when I was revising at school. I've got to be in silence. I got bored and switched off and couldn't sit there. Put some music on, I can revise. So I ignored the teacher's advice because I would have done no revision whatsoever for exams.
Yeah, totally. And that's where a lot of my program is about. Yeah. Sorry, my brain is going in 3 different directions all at the same time. It's like bedtime. People are saying that you need to, calm it down and read the book and turn the lights off. And I'm looking, not for my kiddies, not for our sensory ones. They need to be upside down and doing gymnastics last thing before bedtime for good sensory reason. But we'll come back to your, concentration for that for the minute. Again, we have, in generalities, that finances and maths and focus and numbers, that is very much it's very much your frontal lobe that is applying that clever academic bits and pieces. Your creativity is in other parts of the brain that will be stimulated by music, whereas your frontal lobe really needs attention and your attention. So you would need to find absolutely music that works for you to help you concentrate. You'd need to pay more attention to what music you chose to be able to help you concentrate. Whereas with creativity, any music that you enjoy will probably spark your creativity if if your focus isn't on numbers or concentration for specifics. If it's for inspiring creativity, then it's brilliant to have the music on, particularly in the background. But it would be a question of finding the music that works for you. I also like silence to be able to concentrate on certain things, and that's important. And that's just the way it is. I think it's just different brains reacting and relating to different frequencies for specific tasks, because there's lots of different types of attention, and one of them being very focused and specific, especially if there are certain things like maths. I don't know if that's your forte or not. Some people would love to have music in the background because that maths is their thing and they would enjoy it as part of their creativity.
Not my thing.
I was going to say, because it's not my thing, I really need that focused attention. So actually, silence works for me and would work for others for that reason too.
But why is it I struggled with the revision then without music? Because I couldn't sit there and read books and study and revise. I would be looking out the window after 2 minutes, and it's like I'm never going to pass an exam without some music.
Yeah, because the motivation's not there. Your finances, you have to get them done. So your focus is there. Revision, it's like, but, really, what's chemistry going to do if I want to be a trucker? It's kind of like, our brain's like just not in that same focus. We know it's important, but it still doesn't have that same drive. But having music in the background means that you can concentrate for a bit and then you can enjoy the music. It might only be fleeting seconds, but it's just on, off, and it helps the motivation behind studying and applying yourself to something that ought to be done, but you're not really that keen on doing it, really.
Which brings us round to what we've been saying pretty much every week, which is you can't just apply one rule and say, this is how it needs to be, so suck it up and get on with it. Because we're all individuals and we're all going to have individual abilities within the sensory area.
Totally. Absolutely. 100%.
So it can't be a one size fit all.
Nope.
Great. Well, I love the fact we just go into such diverse areas from truck seat design through to dementia and babies. It's great. Thank you so much for your time again. It's brilliant. And thank you for the questions. Do keep sending questions. hello@pure247radio.org. You can't ask too many questions. We can't have too many. It's fine. Keep asking away. And thank you again for your time, Laure Jackson. Just remind people before we finish, how can they get hold of you if they got questions or needs?
Yep. AnneLaureJackson.com is the website. And under social media, most of the places I'm at Sensory Health Coach.
Fab, and we'll link to that as well, of course, as ever. Thank you so much for your time. I love these. I know people do. It's brilliant. They're listening to the podcast. They're watching the videos, so they're really popular. So thank you so much for your time and your expertise. It's brilliant. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Love being here.